Hey friends and music makers, welcome back. In this week's live stream, I'm creating a brand new track from scratch. I'm going to be focusing on the emotional core of the idea first. As usual, I'll walk you through my creative process, production decisions, and technical approaches while answering your questions live. So if you have any of those, drop them in the chats. Whether you're looking to elevate your skills or unlock your new creative potential, join me as we dive into this musical journey together. So without further ado, let's jump in and run a couple of quick tests. Make sure our microphone and levels are all working. So I'm just going to fire up this little idea I've got here. This is just a test that we've got everything running as we need. It's all looking good this end, so if you are in the stream with me and you fancy doing a little job for me and letting me know that everything's working well, the microphone and the music, that's always much appreciated. I'm sure someone will let me know if there's any issues there, but it all looks good this end. So without further ado then, after that test, let's get stuck in and let's start a brand new live set in Ableton Live and talk a little bit about what we're building today. So, during this week, the last days, I've been working on music with an artist over the sort of Monday right through to Friday. And one little exercise we did during that time working together on music is we did one, good morning, Adrian Dantas, how are you? Hope you're very well. We did a little exercise, so just to come backwards a bit there. So I was working with an artist all through the week doing music, and we did a little exercise, which is sort of how today's track's going to start. It's a new idea, it's from scratch, and it's one that I've also posted just very recently and in the community tab of my YouTube page, a little suggestion of a way you can work before actually opening your DAW. So try a little exercise of just getting a pen and paper, and before you start any ideas in Ableton Live, Logic, whatever, your DAW, just write down on a piece of paper and do a little bit of digging about what this track is about. What is the emotion or feeling you want people to feel or listen from this piece of music that you're going to make? As I said, we've got a blank canvas here, so we're going to do the same sort of exercise. It's going to be, I'm thinking today to do deep melodic. So let's say deep house, but it could be modern deep house. It could also be melodic house. Thinking to do that sort of style. So if I'm going to write something emotional, like I love techno, and that's dark and twisted perhaps, or hypnotic and all those good things. But today I'm making a decision before I open Ableton Live. I'd like to make something with a certain emotional feeling. And the emotional feeling that came to me was giving somebody a warm hug. Who doesn't like a warm hug, right? So that's kind of the vibe, the feeling that I'm writing down on a piece of paper. It's a warm hug. It's going to be deep. It's going to be perhaps an opening tune for some DJ sets, perhaps a sunset track, perhaps something that makes people sort of, you know, tugs on their heartstrings, we say in English, that kind of idea. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm just going to write in a MIDI clip up here, just so everyone can see it. If it's on a piece of paper, we could have that alongside, but I'm just going to say warm hug. Okay, that's kind of the vibe I'm going for in today's idea. It's the emotion, the feeling. And given that we're heading into these AI times and things like that, that's something that AI isn't going to consciously do by itself. You're going to have to push it and ask it to come up with that. Whereas a human, that's something that I understand, and it's an emotion I want my listeners and audience to feel. So as I said, try that little exercise out the next time before pre-opening the door, try and dig down and understand what this track is going to be about before you start it. And so we're setting an intention, an emotion, and that's what we're going to begin with. That then leads me to thinking about keys and scales. And I already know a couple of keys and scales that can work in this direction. And so straight away, I'm going to make a decision there as well. And we're going to go for, let's keep it minor. We could go major or minor here. Let's start with saying we're going to have E as our home key. So that's going to be our root note and home key bass. And we're going to have E minor. So it would look like this. So we're going to be working in E minor. Now, funnily enough, the relative of E minor, so if we duplicate this down, the relative scale, so just a little quick bit of music theory here. Every minor scale has a relative major scale, and obviously vice versa. So we have two scales related to one you choose. So typically if you have E minor, you have the parallel scale of that, which would be E major. So that's what we call the parallel scale. Okay, so E major is the opposite, the parallel. It's just E, looks like that. And if we put this in, it would be E major. So what that means is we could borrow some chords and notes out of that scale. That's the parallel scale. But even before we get the parallel, so major, minor, same home bass, same key, same root note, we've got a relative. And that is just simply the major scale that's related to this minor. And maybe if you already know a little bit about music theory, you'll know that probably the easiest connection to remember of that is the connection between C major and A minor. That is, they are relatives of each other. And I'll show you a tidy little hack or workflow that you can do to find the nearest relative scale. So if we're in, let's say, so we open up the piano roll here, and let's put a note here. So we're in C major, and we want to understand the relative minor scale of that. So again, C major means we could also have C minor. That's the parallel. But if we go 1, 2, 3 semitones down, we land on the A, and that's the relative. So anytime you want to just find the relative scale of whatever key, your home bass, just count. If it's a minor key you're working in, then we count 3 semitones up. And if it's a major key, count 3 semitones down. So what we're working with today, if we're in E minor up here, okay, and we count 1, 2, 3 down, or 1, 2, 3 up, beg your pardon, because we started with a minor, we land on G. So G major is our relative scale, right? And the only thing different is going to be where those notes then start playing from, right? So if we start our scale on the home bass of E, we're playing from the E up to the next octave or down to the next octave. But if we start on G, we're then starting with that as the home bass. So it's a good little handy tip there, and we're probably not going to do a lot of borrowing notes from one or the other, but if we put all of these together here, they all can interchangeably be used to borrow notes and chords and interplay. So if we wanted to do a key change, if we start in E minor, a nice key change would be bring in some G major. And if we want to spice things up, we're in E minor, we could use the parallel E major and see what chords and keys and notes and stuff we have in there and all that good stuff. So back to my intention of emotion, starting with emotion, we're going with E minor and we're trying to give a warm hug as our feeling. Adrian Dantas, just looking at the comments, a quite interesting technique to keep a person set a path instead of just throwing stuff in the wall to see what sticks. 150%. Yeah, and I think if you're writing melodic music and emotional music, then having that emotional platform as the start, that's a good thing. So I'm also not going to begin with drums. I'm also not going to begin with the bass line here. I'm going to start with my music map here. So let's have a quick look at E minor, what's involved. And let's put it on a new MIDI track over here. And let's just figure out what notes we're dealing with. We'll put our warm hug over here. We're going to be in 120 BPM today. We're going to do deep melodic kind of. What's another thing, if you're watching this live stream and you fancy answering this question, pop it in the chat, your answer. What is an advantage of working in a low tempo like this of 120 BPM? Because right now the trend of the music in the last 5 years and sort of up to where we are now, it's getting faster. So if you're a DJ and a producer and you're doing lots of music, you probably notice that the BPMs and the tempo sped up a lot, right? So these days, it's not uncommon to be 128 could be my starting tempo up here. There's a lot of house that's that fast, minimal house that's that fast, lots of melodic stuff. So that's almost feels like what was 124. If you know the answer to what might be an advantage of being at 120, then do drop it in the chat. Let me know what you think. So while we're waiting in case someone answers, let's go for our E minor and just let's have a look, as I said, at what notes we've got to play with, right? Let's have a little look on the piano here and see what we're working with. So E is going to be our home bass. We've got all white notes. Hang on a sec, we don't yet because we're going to change. If I do this, I want to make sure I'm matching up the top here. So let's go E and then minor. And what you'll notice is E minor has one black key and it's the second note in the scale and it's F sharp. So not too many black keys involved in F minor, but we do have the one black key, right? So that's going to add a little bit of spice there to whatever we do musically. Also, just quickly to check, we already established our relative of E minor is G major, and funnily enough, as you will see, it's exactly the same scale, except that we start on the G. So that just moves all the chord types and all of the intervals, the first note, second note, third note, they all move around. Okay, I noticed nobody had a go at that question I asked, which is fine. So 120 BPM versus 128. If you're wanting to make a deep melodic track, obviously 120 is obvious that that's going to be a lot deeper than 128, but what it allows you to do, and this is a pro tip, it gives you more space. Okay, so if you follow the trend of making tracks faster and more BPM and quicker, you have less time to add elements into your track to play off of each other. So if you want a beautiful track that has lots of harmony and different melodies and things like that, slow it down. It'll give you more options. Just even think about if you're trying to play. So this is a tip we often do when I'm working with artists. If you're not a keyboard player by nature or training or experience, but you're wanting to play along to something, you know, if you're playing along at 120 BPM, it's much easier than if we were right up here or even faster. Right, so a little tip sometimes is if you are working faster BPMs or tempo, slow it down and then play it in and then speed it back up again. That might make your life a lot easier if you're wishing to play along with something. Great, so anyway, we've got our motion intention, we've got our tempo sorted, we're doing warm hugs today or trying, and we're going to be in E minor. So let's make a few things off the bat here a little bit. Let's just have a very simple drum groove for a second. So we're going to use our trusty DS kick in here just for a kick to get us rolling. As I said, I'm not going to start with the drums today, not by any chance. It's going to be getting our melody in to play, but I do want some form of a metronome. I can use the metronome, but I also quite like, you know, sometimes to just have a little bit of a drum groove in the background doing the same thing. So that's really up to you. Let's also make a bit of a decision here, and this is getting the track started. Kick doesn't matter too much. I might change that to a sample later. I might layer that DS kick with something, all those good things. But let's say instead of a clap or a snare, I'm going to use a side stick. So let's try for searching for one of those. It's where you hit the stick on the side of a drum, generally the snare or something like that. Let's go to the sample library and see what we've got. Did I spell that right? I kind of did. Okay, let's say one shot. Filter things down a bit. So I'm looking for something like that. There's a classic kind of 707 side stick. So let's have that. So we can again get started. We could go in looking for more samples. I'll just have a quick look down through here. Okay, let's go in here. Should have been an all search actually. So there's a lot here. All right. Well, like I said, I'm kind of okay with just using the one that sort of came to me quite quickly. We don't need to, as I said, go too far down the rabbit hole. Let me just try it again, actually. I'm just going to go all, and then I'm going to go side stick, just because I know there's a couple of other kind of tasty ones around that I could possibly use. All right, but it keeps leading me here. That's fine. I'm going to stick with the one we've got. Let's pop in a pattern there, and let's put in, again, just simply a 2 and a 4 for now. Super basic. This is just, instead of my metronome, just a little bit of a drum. And we are going that deep today, giving ourselves lots of space to add all the good things that we want to add in here musically. Great, okay. I'm probably going to use a shaker as well, so I could maybe grab one of those while we're at it. So we can go Command F, shaker. Let's get a nice one of those. Just a one shot. Nearly. I don't want quite so seedy. Yeah, maybe this guy here. Okay, so let's just open up our MIDI track there, pop in a shaker, and again, just a simple pattern just to get our drum groove a little bit rolling. Let's have that duplicated out a few times. Let's go 8 bars. Let's have a little, one of my favorite little options here, just to have an extra little fill down here. Just make sure that's on the C. Yes, it is. And we'll have some sort of little extra fill along the way with a low velocity. All right, let's just hit play on that. Let's just work on this side stick a little bit. Super simple. We'll come back to that in a moment, because as I said, for now, it's just purely to get a drum groove going. We could use a top loop again if you've got not a lot of time to do music. Don't get yourself bogged down. Just get sort of something rolling here. The drums, as I said, are an accessory for now. We want to get stuck into the music and build out our important parts. So MIDI track, E minor we're going to be in. I'm going to try playing some stuff in and recording it. That would be my preferred thing to try first, and then we'll see how we get on with all the good things that happen in a live stream with latency and all those beautiful things, and just see if the playing kind of makes sense. Otherwise, we'll just program what we're going to have. Just checking in with the chat again. ChatGPT gave me 5 benefits for 120 BPM, and according to it, Creative Space was number 4 in the list. Yeah, interesting. Well, I'm glad it's in the list. I would say it definitely is a strong point for, you know, when you're doing music, if you want to fit more elements in, give yourself more room. So we're just loading up a drift here. We're in E minor, so we've got these notes. So let's just have a bit of a noodle. Let's actually get rid of that shaker. So maybe those sort of notes, but we can capture that and record that. But as I said, I'm just noodling around, and I'm figuring out sort of the rhythm a little bit of it, and whether I'm going to sort of rise up or whether I'm going to sort of rise and fall a little bit. What I'm looking for now is just a very, very simple pattern. So if we look at it in here, I'm just looking for sort of something that's kind of a little bit more of a riff. So if we look at it this way, so I might just try and get the rhythm first. So this could be nice. Let's make the grid a bit smaller. Okay, so that's on our root note of our E minor, but let's say we break it into a bit of a chord, or again, it could even be that it's just literally pedaling on this note. It's just a little riff. So this is just a very, very simple start here. Let's bring the velocity down so we've got a bit of randomization on those notes. And maybe we make this note the louder in velocity. So that's going to change the whole feeling of that. So that's called accenting, right? So if we're trying to make just a simple little melody like this, all we're doing so far is we've just programmed into notes, changed the velocity a bit. We've got a little bit of variation in the length. Timing wise, they're all bang on the grid. So we could also do a bit of humanization. And I'm changing the accenting. So down here where I'm playing around with the velocity, this makes quite a difference, right? So if you've got a simple pattern like this, all the things we can play with are the note divisions, right? That's going to give us some feeling. The timing, whether they're a little bit late or earlier. We can use this great feature of Ableton over here. If we want sort of quite organic changes, we can use this humanize feature here. And you can see here, this really in 12 opens up a lot of timing change if you're looking for a more organic sort of loose feel to the notes. But this accenting, this is one thing you can do to really change the emphasis even with the same pitch of what's going on with the different notes. So we haven't changed pitch here, we've just got a bit of a different rhythm. So play around with the note lengths, play around with the accents, and then what we've also got at the moment is all of these notes are what are called syncopated, as none of them are falling on the beat, right? So if anything is landing here, it's on the beat, or here. And if we change this note, this one's on the beat. So we didn't have before any on beat notes, right? So I definitely don't like that one. So we could vary it a bit. So this makes a big difference, this one here, because it really clearly kind of sets the intention of where the melody starts, right? It comes in right on the beginning of the bar here. This note doesn't have to be split, it can fall over like that. Okay, let's make this 2 bars long. So we're going to have space over here, because this synth is going to talk to another synth. Right, and if we want to pretty this up, maybe we want to make a little bit of a melody out of it. An option would be, let's copy this clip down. By the way, we've got a default drift here. We've got nothing fancy. I'm thinking today, boys and girls, to use a little bit of third-party instruments. So if you're happy to see that, let me know. If you want me to stick to just purely Ableton Live, which I generally do, I'm very fine with that. But I'm also quite interested in the future to sort of use pigments and some Arturia stuff, some native instruments. So let me know if you'd like to see me work with things other than just Ableton Live, or if you prefer to understand how to make Ableton Live do what you want it to do, which are in many of my videos, then by all means let me know. So let's maybe put collision on this, or wavetable, so it's a little bit prettier. I'm going to use drift again, but I'm going to use that for my bass line. So if we make this into like a bit of a bell, thinking about that we're going for sort of something quite melodic. And if we just added a bit of reverb after this, it's just meant to be sort of like a bit of a pretty sort of sound. just something like this. Okay, so down in my second clip here, let's break this up into a bit of a chord and try that, as we're just playing this rhythm right now. So E, the triad of E is going to look like this. That's chord 1, okay? So that's the triad. Let's sort of duplicate that. We're going to do that way. We'll take this, we'll just put it, if we can, we'll do it this way. We'll put it over there, outside of the piano roll, just so this is just for you guys and girls, so you can kind of see. So that's a triad there, okay, of the E. So what we could do is kind of use those chord tones, so move some of these other notes to notes that are in the triad. And we can also, if we go down here, this note also falls in the chord if we were making it like a 4-note chord, right? So that would work. So we could also go down, right? And you could also use, even before doing that, you could also put the other E up here, right, which is the octave. So you could just work with those 4 notes. That would give you 2 E's, both the octaves and the triad notes in between. And if you want, like I said, you can also look at, if you're building the chord out, other notes that make it the extensions and make the chord a 4-note chord, like a 7th chord or a 9th, etc. So let's play around with that. I'm actually going to see what happens if I don't feel like this melody, I want to go up. I feel like I might want to go down. So I'm going to go along here a bit. By the way, if you're joining me in the live stream here, do feel free to add any questions you have in the chat. Adrian's busy there popping things in. I'm going to have a read in a second. Feel free to ask me something or say hello to each other. It's all good here. Adrian Dantas, I would say that you have developed a neutral or unopinionated percussion that does not get in the way and can be easily replicated by something else later. It'd be great to have something from Arturia. Cool, that's great. Thanks, Adrian. Hi, it would be interesting to explore spatialization techniques using packs like Envelope for Live or similar ones. Great, Juan Pablo Castro, I'll keep that in mind. That sounds like a good one for the future for sure. So let's say we go with this E here down to the C, and then maybe even a couple of C's, and then back up to the E. What does that sound like? Yeah, I don't like that it just finishes on the C again. So maybe we explore a non-chord, or we go even further down here. Okay, so we've got new rhythm and a new little melody. Now, if we're to bring all those notes together, like I said, you can see that I'm playing and skipping a note in our scale. I've deliberately put the scale on here, so you can see I'm just accessing other notes that if we build the chord down, you know, they are still going to be part of a typical chord where we played, skipped, and played notes. So if anything, we've built a triad. And in this case, we could actually say, well, it's the A triad. A is the root, C is the middle, and E is the top. And now we've built a melody out of that. So I hope that kind of makes sense. So, you know, but if we have a note like that, then it's not sort of part of, it's part of the scale, but it's not a chord tone. So just think chord tones and notes that are in scale, but they're outside of the chord. So we've got this nice little pretty melody now. We're going deep, 120 BPM. Just going to have a look again. It just kind of annoyed me a little bit before that I didn't get all of my side sticks that I was looking for. I don't know why. I'm sure I've got a lot more than I saw a moment ago, which is interesting. So I'm kind of sure why. So let's maybe actually go in here for a quick sec. Clear all this. Okay, so I'm just going to look for something here. 75, what does that live in? Okay, let's do it a different way. Okay, so let's hot swap this one. I'm just looking for some samples, by the way, guys, because I know that I have some more side sticks, and I just want to understand like where it is that those are, because they didn't come up on the search that I looked for earlier. I'm not kind of sure why, but I can live with it without it. But okay, so it's 75 underscore. Let me right click on this. So I'm just trying to dig down and understand where that is. So let's say show in places. Great, so it's in this folder. Okay, perfect. So now we're kind of where we want to be a little bit. So let's say side in here. Does it kick me out of there? Not quite. So let's go back a little bit and let's just dig in here and see if we can find them in here. So it's not in there. Maybe it's in the rims, snares. Let's get in here. Okay. Otherwise it's going to be in a perk folder or something. Yeah, interesting. All right. Maybe I dreamt that. Could be. Anyway, we'll live with our side stick. As I said, let's not worry about that too much for now. So we've got our rhythm on this collision melody. We've added some reverb to it. So now I want another MIDI track. Let's just get this shaker a little bit tighter. And let's have something that this collision kind of, or this starting melody kind of responds to. So over here, let's copy that last one over that we've done, which has now become the Kickstarter of the melodic idea. So up it goes there. We're just going to look at that pattern because what we're going to do now is we're going to have a response to it kind of over in here. So we could be in the same frequency, let's say. It is in the same sort of range of the piano. These are not going to be treading on each other, right? But maybe we go and start from a different point. So maybe we start on the B, which is the 5. Let me just check that. Yes, it's the 5 chord. So over here, we answer this melody with these notes, perhaps, right? So there's our triad beginning on the 5, which is A, B, sorry, 5, 6, 7, yeah, it's the B, so I need to move that up. That'll be a bit tense because the B is going to be the diminished chord if I undo this. No, actually, sorry, I beg your pardon, it's a minor chord. Just make sure that's right. So B, play, skip, play, skip, play. Yep, it's B minor we're working with there. So that can sound nice. So we're trying to create a bit of a different sort of tension over here that answers the other clip. Let me just get myself back on track a bit here. Okay, so we're going to work with these notes. I'm going to spread them out a bit. We could even have something like that. Could be a little rising kind of interesting little pattern. Let's get a new synth for that. I'm thinking sort of something quite kind of let's say quite sort of sawtooth or square wave. So maybe here we'll just again get an analog or something just quickly, just to get it going. Adrian, now part of the, so Adrian Dantas, just reading the comments, now the part of having a plan comes into play, right? We're exploring the notes of the triad and they should sound aligned with the concept of this warm hug. Yeah, so it's a deep melodic track. The warm hug is kind of going to be important to keep in mind. I want an emotion from this. So right now I'm just trying to build very slowly. The main thing that's going to give the warm hug, I think, is the key and the scale. E minor, G major, they're a great place to start. But now we're sort of exploring, not worrying too much about sound design, the actual synths, but we're exploring patterns and conversations and things between the elements, okay? Okay, so we're not going to be doing that, for sure not. So let's maybe invert these guys. Maybe this can come back up to the E, not sold on the rhythm. Okay, so let's take the collision and we're going to change that already just to a simple kind of wavetable for a second. Just a sine wave, so it's quite neutral. And with analog, we're going to shape it just a little bit as well because it's very dominant. So this is just very raw, boys and girls. We're just started. We're just getting started. So this is now this conversation between the two pieces, and we're just working with the rawest materials. So I don't like that last note, so we're going to leave that for the moment. Maybe in this sort of position. Bit better. Okay, so if we were to sort of add, just to give you an idea here, if we put a little bit of delay on the analog, keep in mind these are very raw sounds just now, but we're just getting this conversation going between these two melodies. Are we getting a warm hug? We're going on the way there, right? This is good. So now what we're going to do, I realize I've made a bit of a mistake here as well, because actually in this one I'm working on now, this analog clip over here, I don't want these notes playing, by the way. They're just a template. They were there to sort of show me what was kind of going on with the melody, right? So let's step back a little bit in time here. We're also going to get rid of all these extra notes here. So the only reason this is here is just to remind me that that's what's going on the wavetable track, right? That's what's happening over here. It's the first melody that comes in, and then our next melody is having a conversation with it over in here. So they're playing off each other at the moment. So what we want to do is mute these guys. That's it. And then what we might do is we might make in the future this one like 4 bars. So we might have a long time before this re-triggers. So we're going to get 2 times the other melody, and this is just happening every now and then. But it's starting to give me the feeling I'm looking for. We're working on a warm hug emotion, and we're with very raw sounds here. No presets, nothing fancy. We've got a raw wavetable with a reverb on it, and we've got this analog which is raw, which now has a bit of reverb. So all we've done is just given it a little bit of spaciousness, but nothing more. So these sounds will get worked on in the future. We'll get all of these sounding exactly like we want them to sound. Okay, so next up, maybe we can have in here, so let's label these a little bit. This is going to be our sort of melody 1, and it's going to be a bell sort of sound, nice soft, something nice. It's going to play a lot through the track. It's going to be in there a lot. This one's going to be a more brighter, kind of more sort of leady sound, so let's call it a bright lead. It's going to be happening. The drums are super basic. That's all good. We just want a little bit of a guide. That's all. We're making an emotional, deep melodic track. Deep house, modern deep house. There's going to be nice percussion going on. So we might actually add something that's already going to add a little bit of spice here. So let's do that. We've also got a bass line to come up with in a second. So we're going to add a bass. Again, I like to play stuff in, but YouTube and OBS plus Ableton doesn't really equal a nice playing experience. I'm working on it, guys and girls, to try and get that so I can get it so I could play a lot more on my keyboard. But also then you see times where it takes a while before I'm going to land on something that I like, whereas this is a little bit faster. So thinking of speed again, let's kind of like pop over and find ourselves some percussion as a starting point, and we want not that folder, this folder. Let's just jump into the sample library. It doesn't really matter too much, so we don't need to see all the bits and pieces of who it is and all that kind of stuff too much. I mean, if you want to know, there's no secret, you can let me know, but I'm just grabbing samples. I actually make most of my own kind of sounds, so in this case it's just to get something rolling reasonably quickly. So sorry, wrong push of a button. So I don't want that. I want that, I think it is. Let's get into percussion. Let's get down in here. Okay, let's have a listen. Okay, maybe this sort of bell clave. Let's drop that down into a MIDI track, and let's use Ableton's rhythm here. Great way to come up with a very quick sequence here. We're going to use rhythm to lay down some notes for this little percussion sound I've added. So I'm going to turn this off here, so it's not going to generate anything for a second, and I'm going to set up my parameters here. So first, velocity in this corner over here, I'm going to set the range between soft and hard to going down further than it would have, so it's going to give me softer notes. I'm also going to have a little bit less than max velocity. We'll look at the shifting of the pattern or the accenting in a moment. Split and shift define. Step duration, let's maybe have 16ths, so we can get a little bit more interesting notes. And now we can pitch as well. Let's say we'll have C3, so it's going to put it right in the middle of the piano. We don't really need pitch change at the moment. Then we're going to turn on auto, and now we can start, and we're going to duplicate. So we're going to have a longer clip. 4 bars. Yeah, let's say we start with 4 bars, and now let's get it rolling. So that little pattern there could be interesting. We can work on it. So you can see we've got lots of sort of velocity variety already, which we can sort of mess around with manually down here. And then what we could do that really makes the pattern quite interesting is shift here. So shift is going to move the pattern left or right, so we can shift the timing. I like that. So it's a little bit more syncopated. So again, we're getting on beats and little bits of off beats in here. We could also move the accenting. So accenting being that this note here, for example, as you can see, it's kind of getting towards the more peak. And what we can do is kind of move that. So if we go back and select all our notes, we start playing around with this, it's going to move that accenting around. That can be really interesting, but I'm going to go back kind of here. I'm also going to bring the note lengths in a bit. Just so we're getting our own little custom kind of vibe there. Then I'm going to jump over to the sound for a little bit. Let's get into the envelope, shape it a little bit. So what I want to do with this, so it sounds quite okay as the kind of percussion sound that it is, but what I want to do is I want to add Ableton's spectral resonator to this, and I'm trying to come up with a kind of percussion, an interesting sort of sequence loop that's going to be in the background of these melodies here. So this is going to be the more surprising element, let's say. It's built from this percussion sound. It sounds quite nice as a percussion loop already. As an organic percussion loop, and we might have one of those anyway, but if I put Spectral Analyzer on, going to start breaking up into this kind of sequence. So I'm going to tweak this a bit to get the sort of sound I'm looking for. And you can, if we bring down the dry wet a lot, we can really blend this spectrum analyzer kind of percussion down into a lot of the dry kind of clave, to a blend of the two, to all the way over here in wet, where you really, this is just the source material rather than we're really noticing that it's a clave, right? But it's still providing the sound that the spectral analyzer is playing with. And if we pitch it up and down, it's providing a really nice background element to it, and we can shape it in here. So what's the advantage of getting it into a simpler and using it with MIDI? Well, we've got an interesting pattern up here that we could vary. We've got lots of good things to work with that we could make this sequence evolve over time and do all sorts of things. So this kind of pitch sound that I was just doing, could be really interesting to have an LFO or something on that, actually automating it. So we could automate it here to do that, but I think we could do it also over here in the spectral analyzer. So let's maybe do that. Let's maybe do a little sound design here where we kind of take this sound and elevate it a bit already, because I kind of want to capture in my head what I'm thinking here. So I'm going to map an LFO to that parameter. Now I'm going to slow it down, the rate of the LFO, change it to something like maybe stray or glider. Bring the depth down a bit as well. So that's quite an interesting little sequence that can kind of roll around in the background there, right? Nice. And it feels like it's moving around my head. Okay, let's get our kick a little bit tighter. Just a little tweak or two on the kick. We're also in E minor. G is one of our notes because we know the relative is G major. So I'm just going to pitch this up to a G kick. F, funnily enough, in E minor, F is the note, the black key that we have. So F sharp, should I say. So we don't actually have F. Sounds odd in this scale. We have E as the root, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, and then E. So we don't actually have an F, so it's good to tune the kick here to a G, which we do have. Excuse me, just look in the chat. Adrian, I thought about creating macros just to make it more practical to find the go-to parameters to be automated. You can always do that if you feel it's easier for you, and also you want to map it to a MIDI controller. You can always go and put anything into a rack and map it all up, especially if you wanted the spectral analyzer with all of the different parameters mappable. But what I did here with the LFO, if it's catching my ear, it's now part of the sound design of this kind of particular sample, this clave that's now resonated with an LFO. It's like this moving sequence. So let's get a bass line in here. Bass line I think I'm going to make with drift. And I have a pattern in mind. I have like a falling or rising sort of syncopated pattern. So let's say if it's a syncopated pattern, it's going to be in and around the offbeats a little bit. So let's say we're sort of just really rough to start with. So let's say we're going to have 2 bars of the E. Then I'm going to go down to the D maybe. And then here I might go down to the C, or again, if we stuck in chord tones, we'd be skipping that, we'd be there. And then here we would be going down to skipping a note and playing a note, we'd be down here, right? But I'm not sure if I'm going to keep that movement. I like kind of might explore some of the other notes in the scale for a bit of tension. And again, just listening to the progression, super raw. Let's work on the synth a little bit. I like the progression, right? Let's work on the filter envelope a bit. Have a bit of movement on the filter cutoff here with an LFO. We've got an envelope on it, so we can automate all these beautiful things in the future, bring our track to life. It'll really be able to come to life. But let's already try a bit of LFO on the cutoff. So we're just going to grab the LFO here. We're going to map it to the low pass frequency. And we're going to bring the rate down. Working with a sine wave, so we've just got a little bit of movement. It's just opening and closing that. It's just wiggling that around for us in the background. Again, we can change our waveform. So it's a bit more random. We could also have it musically, like sync to a note. But I'd like it to be a bit more organic than that. So not note synced. Nice. Somewhere just with that little bit of movement there. Let's add the noise oscillator. And now let's get in here and let's spice this up a bit, because this is super simple. I just kind of got the progression going, but there's nothing else exciting here, and it's offbeat. It works, it's functional, all of those good things. Let's randomize the velocity, great. And let's get in here and let's maybe put a few little tricks to use as well. So let's start by kind of just putting in some notes, changing the note lengths, rhythms. Let's have some ghost notes. Maybe a pitch change as well. Bit of extra rhythm in there. take this one away. Let's see. I'm just spicing this up, making it a little bit more interesting than it was a moment ago, right? We just had this rolling bass. Now we're kind of getting a little bit more rhythm and a little more interest in it. Doesn't have to be too much, but we've got getting some variation in there, right? Maybe we try this little theme again. Nice. Let's do that. That theme's working well. A bit too early, this one. Let's bring it in here just for a little bit. Okay, hang on. Lost my timing there a little bit. Let's fix that. Okay, let's try again. Okay, let's try an on beat somewhere that we don't really have. It's all syncopated. Let's maybe have an on beat, especially the last little phrase here, the last bar. Okay, I'm going to leave the on beat out. There we go. So we've got this nice kind of bass. We're working on this emotion of a warm hug. We decided today we're writing melodic. We're going deep, 120 BPM, melodic. Deep house, modern deep house. We're choosing E minor. F sharp is our one black key, the rest are all white, and we're trying to convey this idea of a nice emotion in it. It's conversations. All so far, Ableton synths, raw sounds, a little bit of reverb, that's it. Okay, so maybe we can get a little bit more. And again, this is all one scene. It's going to be spread out over the track. So maybe what we'll do already is we'll actually move over to the arrangement view for a second. So let's do that. Let's take everything we've got so far, bring it over into the arrangement of Ableton. And let's sort of work on it a bit over here so that we can already kind of see what we could build, so we can make a couple of different scenes here already. So bear with me and we'll kind of walk through that in a second here. So let's make an extra one here. Hang on, let's undo that. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, pop that over there. Let's put a few markers here. So literally we've been kind of working in this loop, and maybe this loop that we're working on is the peak. It could well be like the main bit of the track, and so we could already have over here something that could be a contrast to that. We can also do all this in the session view, but sometimes it could be good to look at this over here. And so what we might be doing over here is adding things, or we might be subtracting things. So maybe if we don't label that the peak, actually, let's do it this way. We take that label away. And what we'll do is maybe we'll take the bass out of there. So that's going to go. So we go back to kind of the loop without the bass here. So what does it sound like without the sequence? So we'll take this one out for now. So it might be that this is really like all about an intro. So we might build something to complement that kind of groove and that little bit of melody, and then we bounce over to here and we bring in the bass line. And let's say we don't bring in this yet, we bring in a fuller melody, start with the bass. So we're kind of already testing out a little bit of arrangement and testing out what we might need to add to what we've got so far, right? Kind of moving to that quite quickly. So over here we could bring our sequence in. Let's give this one a little bit of reverb already, just so it fills in the little space around it. And we'll just bring this down a bit. Kind of want it, if you're looking at the sequence that I'm on here, kind of want it to sort of die out a little bit before the next one triggers. Keeping in mind, like I said, all the sounds are still extremely raw. And so far, all Ableton Live. So you be the judge. I don't know if it's a warm hug, but I like the feeling in it, right? That's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to write intentional, emotional track. It's about the music, it's about the melodies and the harmonies. That's the concept of this track, and the warm hug and the E minor is my kind of guidelines to try and execute that. Then the sounds and then the patterns all come together to kind of try and guide me to that result. I'm going to take that reverb off a little bit, maybe make more reverb. Just adjusting, shaping. Let's have a conversation in here. So what we might do, copy all this over. It would be an evolution again of the concept. So when you're doing this kind of thing, using the arrangement like we've done earlier, I would do this very often, copying down here into the scenes, the same kind of concept. I'm flushing out ideas of breaks and peaks, builds, drops, those kind of things. What do I need to add back over in here? So I'm kind of jumping quickly into a bit of an idea of sort of getting an arrangement rolling, as well as sort of still developing all the parts that I think should go together here. So it's can be a good way to work if you get stuck in a loop over here and you don't really know how to evolve that here. This could be a really good way to work over in here. And what you can actually do, as I said, is just literally copy what you start with, and it can be even simpler than that. So you can literally start with just a kick. Let's say we're beginning and you do this, and then you come up with the bass and you put that underneath it, and then you have the two of those together like so, and they're looped, and then you think, okay, that's my start, and then you duplicate that over, and now you're thinking about what you're going to write under here to go with that, and you keep moving left to right. It could be a great way to get out of getting stuck in a loop and not being able to progress it. So we're going to get back over here, and we're going to get some sort of pad or something going on here to go under here. So let's try that. Let's get some sort of instrument. We might use a preset of Ableton here. I was thinking today to use sort of like some other VSTs, which perhaps, as I said, I did ask a question before, someone mentioned they wouldn't mind seeing some Arturia stuff, so we could do that. I've got Yuhi, Arturia, native instruments, all that good stuff. So for example, this melody track here, let's just do a quick demo of it here. At the moment, it's wavetable with just a reverb, that's all it is. But if I was to grab a favorite preset here perhaps, or something like that, we can compare it. The pattern is there, that's the most important thing above all else, really. So let's grab Contact from Native Instruments. We'll let that load up. Adrian Dantas, that this spectral resonator brought this TB303 acid quality, but it's subtle. Yeah, I think it's nice to bring in something a little more electronic and a little bit more sort of, I would say, underground, or a sequence of some sort. So let's grab this hybrid keys. It's quite a nice contact patch. Let's go over here. Let's do the 1.0. Kind of still trying to get used to this view, to be honest. The classic view. It's a brand new view. Side pane. What's going on here? Let's drag it out. That'll help. Okay, cool. That's better. So yeah, because there's Contact 8, sort of brand new a bit to me. So we've got this hybrid keys. I'm just going to show you what that could sound like on this melody that we've got here. So let's come back over here. Let's say not an organ, but more in here. Right, could be something really nice like that. Just to sort of, and I think there's a broken piano here that sounds nice. So, you know, if you want to use things other than Ableton and you have those things available, you can absolutely go for it. I like showing you how you can build things though with Ableton as well, because, you know, without needing to buy lots of plugins, we kind of have this, you know, simple sound at the moment doing that melody. So let's, as I said, work on a bit of a pad or something underneath here. Let's maybe have a bit of meld. Haven't had that out today. We're working, by the way, in Ableton Live 12 here. And let's maybe try on the keyboard a little bit of a chord or two on the meld. Okay, let's get a different oscillator. So we'll turn off B. Let's have one of the more unusual swarm sine or something. Let's note sync it. So we want either G major or E minor up here. They're both actually going to work. So I'm just going to try out some different chords here. Too low, okay. Okay, so maybe we just do the 2-chord sort of pad type movement. Let me see if I can get it here in sort of the timing I'm thinking. Probably a bit busier than it needs to be. Try again. Yeah, okay, that sounded almost there, I think. Something like that sounded better. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can play this, then I can capture it, then I can work on the sound a bit. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so that's the capture of what's going on the keyboard. So let's open that up, have a look at that. So I've kind of been playing one chord held, and I've kind of added a top note to it and then added a lower note to it. So it's maybe, let's have a listen to it back, and then we can see if we're going to adjust that a little bit. Okay, so yeah, we need to kind of bring the start of these notes here. The change of it's kind of, that's on beat there, so we're fine with that. We could also, by the way, quantize that. We could also have a look back in here. Maybe I played a better version of it somewhere there, but I think we can work with this last one. That was kind of the one that sort of sounded quite okay. So what we might do is actually just undo that. We'll just take these and we'll go into the transform tab. By the way, if you're here in the live stream with me and you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Feel free to say hello and let me know where you're tuned in and listening from, all that good stuff. So we want over here, we want, sorry, I was in the right tab. We want quantize. We want to see what the grid is, which is 8th notes. So that's okay. We want the start of the note only, and we want to move it over to the start. Okay, well, that's evened them all out. And now I can just bring them into there. So that's one change. So this note here probably is okay where it changes. Yeah, we might leave the rest. It's kind of organic. Okay, change of mind there. So let's fix this. Let's if we revoice this. Could work. Let's tighten these up a little bit as well. We could quantize it, but I'm also okay with just moving it manually, nudging it. Okay, so what I think could be nice here, I can kind of hear something, maybe in this last bit here, that we can kind of change this a little bit here. And we could have another little chord maybe in here that links us back to this chord, potentially, or a little progression in here. So we're playing the E, the root triad here, and we're finishing at the moment on an E also, but with an inversion there. So it doesn't cause us too many problems. When it was like that, this is just me sort of unpacking the music theory here, that was going to loop around and match this. So actually looking for a little bit of interest to spice that up a little bit, so it's not quite so, quite so obvious that that's the case. So what I want to kind of do here, let's kind of get in the back here and change the grid a bit. So this way, I want to kind of split that. That should probably do it. Or what I can do, actually, it'll be quicker even just to do this. Let's do that. Build our little chord. So we're going to get a re-trigger there, which will be nice. I'm going to do that, but we're also going to think about, so if we're on the root chord here with an inversion, we're thinking about adding something that we don't have here that kind of brings it back around to this, that could be a bit more interesting than what we have. So we could use the 7, that would be the D down here. That would want to go home to the root chord, which this is the 1, this is the 6. So this could be, and this is the 1 with an inversion. So this guy over here could actually be the 5 down here. So we could be like play, skip, play, we build the triad, then we build the 7, the 4th chord here, and we've got a common tone there. So if we invert it like that, there we go. We've just built a chord 5 that kind of shares common tones actually on the top and on the bottom with an inversion. So let's listen to what that sounds like. That should turn around to here. We have to check how it sounds here to here as well. It's okay. Let's try it without the inversion. Not quite on that. It's better how it was. Try this note moved. I don't mind that. Let's try it up here. I think that's my favorite option. Could also even resync it. No, okay. So we'll leave it like that for now. Let's work on the meld a bit. get a little bit of movement into this filter cutoff. So we could use an LFO or an envelope on that. If we use the mod envelope, every time a chord re-triggers, we get that kind of feeling, that really stabby. If we go LFO, let's go in and adjust that a bit. Go on the ramp. So talking back to where we started with this 120 BPM sort of deep melodic idea, this is helping. We want lots of movement in this. We want to keep it organic and moving around and kind of nice and interesting. LFOs are going to help us with that, but coming back to conversation with Adrian Dantas earlier in the chat and this decision to keep it at 120 BPM, we've got quite a lot of elements already in here. We've got a bass, couple of melodies. So if we bring these chords across to kind of later when we introduce more characters, sequences and other melodies, we're fitting a lot of kind of music into this track so far. And 120 BPM, that's the pro tip that I gave earlier, is going to be a lot easier to do that in 128 BPM, because if we suddenly go up there, everything's going to sound a lot more crowded. It doesn't sound bad, but it sounds different. And the more we try to perhaps put into there, the more difficult it might be to put it all in there. So it was starting to get a bit kind of clashy and a bit too busy. So let's bring this meld down in volume. So we get that pad in the background a little bit. So the idea for me is when I started with this pad over here, this isn't going to play. And it's a nice kind of like different scene. To what's going to happen later. So when the pad comes out, so let's come back here actually, let's take the bass out here. So we're getting different scenes. Try our chords back here perhaps. I'm just trying a little modification there, taking out a few chords, or maybe changing it, giving a little bit of space for the melody to shine. So already we've got some parts here that we can really use to sort of, and we've sort of gone straight into here from scratch, from zero. We've got different communication between different elements. We're in this scale, we're getting a bit of a kind of nice warm good emotion going on, and by doing it this way, moving left to right, building these kind of little boxes a bit here, later we can kind of move these out on the timeline over here in the arrangement and then start joining them all together, and we can go very quickly from maybe being stuck in a loop over here and not sure how to, you know, bring this down and do the similar sort of thing we're doing over here. Well, this way you just kind of can see it in a different light, and play around with, you know, what you need to add below each, or what you feel each scene actually needs. And as I said, this is my idea for an intro. I haven't labeled them because I've kind of been doing it very loosely here, but this could well be the intro. This sounds to me like a nice build where it kind of strips back. Maybe more drums in here, percussion, nice building energy, and then this is an idea of a break or a drop. Need to work on this idea, but I think I could definitely make space for the chords and the melody to fit, or perhaps the chords, as I said, are not there, or we have something different. Drop B is like that, perhaps. So play around, feel it out, feel what you've got, feel what you don't have. So let's come back over here to this section. So I feel in here, there's also maybe space for another element, musically that is. So we're going to go there. Again, I'm going to take away that contact patch. That was just there to show you. I mean, you could bring this to all this to life quite easily as well with presets and your favorite VSTs. It's mainly about obviously all the patterns in the music first, and getting all that right, getting your warm hug, getting your emotion, and then you can go to town with your sound design and all the different synths you want to use. But here we're just with native Ableton raw kind of stuff, and if it sounds already decent like that, we're probably on a pretty good pathway, I would say. So we've been using a lot the root chord, we've used a bit, well, we know that G major can work with E minor, it's the relative scale. So why don't we play around with that? So let's have a G, and if we open up the piano roll like this and we build out the triad, we can see that G here is G minor. So if we're G major, okay, it's the same chord, right? No, it's not the same chord, sorry, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. So we are here, and you can see that that would be then G major, and that's the point I wanted to make. So given that they're relative scales, we're going to use a bit of a music theory idea here. We're going to use G major instead of G minor. It's G minor in the E minor scale, and it's the chord 1 in G major, and it's G major. Okay, so we're going to try that as a chord stab sort of thing over what we've got. And let's put it in the intro a bit here, and let's maybe give it something like a drift or analog, something like that. Yeah. All right, for now, yep. And what we could do is maybe we could try a little idea here where we play just a couple of chords. So we do that, or not quite that. So we bring that, where's that coming? Yeah, well, it is in the second section, but maybe we play around with the timing of it a little bit. Could even be closer conversation to this part. So if I bring this up here, these two sort of having a little chat with each other. And maybe what we could try here is the other chord, then we go to the E minor. So we bring a G and an E minor in as a little bit of a chord movement. So we can make up here, we put ourselves into E minor. So we've borrowed a chord from the relative scale, that's the G major. We're building back out a triad here. Again, super just raw at the moment. Raw sounds, raw ideas. Do want to loop this, so let me loop it. Yeah, it's a bit early there. Prefer it. It's definitely prefer it in this spot. Okay, so maybe not quite happy with the length there. We've got to get some velocity into those. We've got to get a nice synth sound, all those good things. But a couple of chords in here can go. Let's just have a little step back and just see where we are octave-wise, because I have a feeling everything's pretty condensed now as well in that area. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a bit of a look. Let's kind of do a bit of work here. Just a bit of housekeeping first. Let's make that, hang on, Heath, what are you doing? Let's make that MIDI clip, this a MIDI clip. So I'm just consolidating a few things together. Okay, let's get this new thing we're working on in a bright color over here so we can kind of contrast it. And then we're going to pop open that, bring that down a little bit, pop this open, pop that open, and that should give us the overview of where everything is, right? And so as I sort of suspected, I can hear this. My pink chord is kind of landing the same place as the pad, and the melody kind of idea has a little overlap, but it's even a bit lower. So maybe we can start kind of moving this around. And in this scene, we don't have, or this loop, we don't have the bass line, but the bass line at some point is going to be in there. So that's also going to be, so we can bring the bass line in just to check. So if we turn that on in this scene and we look at that as well, so we sort of say, let's include where the bass is, melody, and the different harmonies. We've got everything's kind of going on between octave 2 and a little bit in octave 4. It's okay to have overlaps, but we don't want everything literally to be stacked on top of each other. So I'm starting to make these chords, these pink chords, and I'm thinking they might go up another octave, or the blue chords come down another octave. So I want to play around with that now and see if I can space things out a bit. The bass is a little bit misleading because the notes are up high. So this is our bass line here. The notes in the MIDI are up in the E's, but they're actually in the synth an octave lower here. So maybe if it helps, which it could do if you're sort of starting out and you're not sure what's going on in your track, you might want to, you know, bring these down. So let's do that, bring the bass line down a bit, and we'll adjust the synth if we need to. It still sounds okay there. Let's just turn off a few things just so we can check our bass while we're messing around. So it still sounds okay down there. So we could probably leave it like that, but we could also take this octave away and go another octave down. And then we've more or less got the same sound as what I'm showing you here. But we're just not doing it internally in the synth, we're doing it with the actual MIDI notes. But I think what I like is actually back up one here and have the synth detuned, because it is different. These oscillators are tuned rather than the notes, so it has a different sound to it. So I kind of like that result. We've moved them one octave down. And now if we put that with this, we have a bit of separation, more separation. This is all going to help your track mix itself. And now I can play around actually a bit with the timing of this. And I do like that short stabby more on the chords. Maybe with this G major, because it's a chord that we borrowed from the relative scale, we invert it a bit. What's that sound like? So we actually go chord down and then up. Okay, and let's bring in our blue. So let's try these up an octave. Or we could go back down, even an octave lower, too low. So I'm testing out all the space I have to work with here. So let's maybe take the 2 chord stabs. All right, let's work on these chord stabs a bit now, make them sound a bit nicer. But we've squeezed in another thing, and let's actually bring in then also, even though it's not going to probably play here, we've got this other melody conversation as well that comes later in our arrangement. I still have a bit of an issue with the 3rd note there. That doesn't quite work for me at the moment, so I need to look at that in the future. So I might actually, while I've sort of still not quite settled on that, I'll just make it that little 3 note for the moment, pluck sort of sound. But it does all work where we currently are. We've now squeezed in a bit more music, and this is all in favor of the low deep BPM that we're working with. I think this chord needs to change for this chord potentially. Or maybe I just repeat that. Okay, let's work on this. Just trying to find the synth sound for this chord. Sound design it a little bit. Okay, and this chord, it's going to be a bit like sort of dub techno sort of sounding for me. I want a nice long delay and reverb on it. Okay, let's take stock, a little bit of what we've got. And I think I'd like these to play kind of the reverse way around to the way they're currently playing, these two chords. So they play down and then up. So maybe if I move myself from bar 1 to bar 5, so in theory, and we'll loop this as well, in theory we're going to start from here and we'll play this one first. I kind of like the high chord now. I like this, right? So it's kind of what I'm feeling. So maybe I return this. And maybe we don't borrow the chord in the end. We go back from the major. So we're looking at Yeah, it is G major, so maybe we're having a different chord here. This is the root E, and this could be this chord. Okay, that I quite like. Bit of randomization. There we go. So interesting, right? We've squeezed in a fair bit of music here, so now we can kind of unpack a little bit, as I said, of what goes in which scene and where. So we've got, you know, I've been working away in this area here, but this kind of originally was a bit of an intro. So maybe we move across a few things that we've built here, and we kind of strip this area back a bit. And so what we might come in here and do is turn this. Again, do a bit of housekeeping, always a good idea. Alex Moreno, very good to see you, my friend. Sorry, just checking in the chat for a moment. Good morning, very happy to see there's a new live stream I'll rewatch from the beginning later today. Thank you for sharing. You're very welcome. Good to see you. Okay, so we're gonna pop that together there. So this idea was a bit of intro, let's say. So we need that pad, you can hear. And this was out, I believe. So let's try that again from the top. Okay, hang on a second. So you see I'm testing out, trying out when the pad comes out, what goes nicely together in a conversation. There's lots of automation that needs to happen, like these delays. They'll be, particularly on that synth, that will be delaying into the space. Too much. Yeah, so kind of feeling my way about what kind of works where and when. Maybe also this scene, this clip here becomes this clip. But a good platform to start with here. I definitely feel like, as I said, the omission of choosing a key and a scale and staying in 120, trying to make this nice deep melodic idea. The goal was a warm hug. I don't think it's too far away from that. I think there's a really nice feeling in here. You know, the steps now are to bring it all alive, but we've got these kind of different sections, like a bit of an intro and then a bit of progression on from the intro, section 1 or verse 1, and then we've got this kind of build type area here, and then we've got the beginnings of a bit of a break here. And if I just jump to the drums that I would start to build, because we're remembering that this track didn't begin as much of anything to do really with drums. It was just about building a bit of a compass to play around with. The kick, none of these sounds are the final decisions. Like, they're all just sounds to hear, listen, get a feel for it. So if we look at what's going on, we've just got a DS kick here. Sounds quite nice, just playing a simple pattern. Excuse me. So we might change that a bit in the future. A drift on the bass that I've adjusted a little bit to shape it. The melody is a wavetable, again, just adjusted it a little bit to shape it. It needs delays and things to make it all come together. Another wavetable here that's just got reverb and delay, again, to make it sort of have the feeling. The meld with a bit of modulation on it to move it around a bit. I think I definitely would have, we can do it actually in the synth. We'll do that in a second. We can also have the panning moving around a little bit, perhaps with the same LFO, so we can just bring that up a little bit, just make it move around our head a little bit on the panning side. I'm going to adjust that in a sec. Then we've got this lead down here, again, that's analog, just shaped a little bit. Then we've got this kind of cool spectral resonator percussion sound that's giving us that sequence that we built, again, using Ableton and using the pattern, the rhythm that generates this pattern, and then we've tweaked it. We've got a side stick instead of a clap and or a snare, and it's very, very basic without really any special source at all yet. And a shaker sample in a simpler. So as you can see, all nice and simple stuff, but we got a feeling of what we've got here. We can now switch it out to fancy presets and all that kind of good stuff. But let's just grab a top loop just so you can kind of maybe hear what I would be thinking if I was going for some percussion. Which I think this track deserves, some more hi-hats, some more, like I'd work on a conversation now between some, you know, maybe toms, bongos, claves, those kind of things. So let's maybe have a little loop here. You know, so if we were just using that top loop, whoops, wrong track. We just want a bit of audio. Could be something like that. This is quite nice, this one down here, so let's bring this down. So something like this could be good, and we could take this audio loop actually, tweak it a little bit. Let's move the playhead. So I'll just show you a little way we could make this loop our own a bit. Just take away a few things so we can hear it. So what I'm doing, it's a nice way to simply make a loop your own, is changing where the loop starts from. Instead of starting on the one here, we're moving around 16th notes. Changing the groove. Now, not every position is going to work. Tighten it up a bit using the beat preserve over here. Just using my ear to pitch it up a little bit or pitch it down. Maybe a little bit pitched down. So these drum loops I've added here, they're just for a little bit of context. They're super rough and ready again. I would absolutely fine tune those a lot. I would remove portions of it. If I was using audio, to be honest, what I would do now is similar to what I've done with all the other tracks, and I would kind of find my own percussion sounds and make a little beat to go in and around. They're just there so you can get a bit of a feel for how that could sound and work. So let's do a little walkthrough. So what I kind of already mean with this, we can kind of do it roughly here perhaps, even in just the raw audio form. Yeah, you know, it could even be just like a little bit of a fill. But yeah, I would work on all of that and maybe make my own little percussion pattern out of it. Yeah, so it's too dominant there, but as I said, it's just hasn't been worked into shape yet. So on that note, I'm just sort of thinking to wrap things up in a second. Hopefully you've found that interesting and you've learned some things along the way. We've got there from 0. We've used Ableton Live 12. We're using Ableton Live 12. We've used lots of Ableton sounds. We chose a warm hug as the concept. We went into E minor. We learned a little bit of it, did a bit of music theory stuff at the beginning, and now we've come up with, you know, conversations and parts that can all go together to convey that feeling and message. We've also got some interesting sections that we can play around with in order to arrange the idea. And we stuck at a very deep BPM of 120 to sort of give ourselves more working space to incorporate more music. So a quick little point here, just wanted to bring up. I have posted a comment in my YouTube community tab as coming around into the month of June, I need to make a couple of little changes here on the live stream side of things. So up until now, I've been live streaming, you know, Ableton Live and electronic music production content 2 hours every single Sunday, pretty much without fail. Like last week I wasn't here as I was working, and that's a little bit the thing here. My personal life and work, it's getting busier. It's getting a little bit harder to include this every single week. So what I'm thinking to do is do 1 live stream per month. That's going to be for a longer time period. So thinking to make that around sort of 4 hours. For example, if we're on this track now, we would only be halfway through and I would be continuing on to take it further into a track. So option 1 that I'm thinking is around 4 hours on the last Sunday of the month, a long live stream, instead of the current weekly formats. But before I finalize this decision, I wanted to have your inputs, particularly if you're here with me since the beginning of the journey on the channel here. I appreciate all of you an awful lot. And I'd like to know your input. You know, would you prefer a thumbs up on a more longer live stream once a month? Or would you prefer a couple of shorter live streams sort of twice a month? What are your thoughts on that? Drop a comment below or check out the community post and let me know there. In the end, my goal is to keep delivering high quality content in a schedule that I can manage. I'm also going to be digging into more short form videos on the channel, which is something I haven't done a lot of. I was doing lots of live streaming 2 hours of music like this from scratch. So I'm going to be chipping in the short form videos, cameraless, faceless, so you don't have to see my face, but I'll be digging into lots and lots of good stuff, especially where we're heading as artists, producers, DJs, performers, where we're going into the future here, because I see part of my responsibility and job is to help a lot of you out there, and especially some of you who will be transitioning from maybe a producer who's been doing it for many, many years into the technology of where things are going to head and go. So thanks to all of you for being part of this journey. Your feedback means a lot, so please let me know if you feel like doing so. And don't forget, please, to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And for sure, I will see you all very soon in the next one. Adrian Dantas, just check the comments before I go. Adrian Dantas, my vote is 1 hour bi-weekly. Okay, that's interesting. Vote noted. Thank you very much. Alex Moreno, in-depth live stream would be very interesting. Yeah, it would be like, I've seen the model on other channels. One stream, as I said, the last Sunday of the month for 4 hours, long into a track kind of concept. And more short tutorial videos up to 25 minutes. Yeah, there'll be, as I said, more once a week almost short form videos, somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes of different topics and contents related to electronic music, producing, DJing, performing, Ableton Live. And I'm starting to branch out, looking at AI tools, Pigments, Arturia, all the good different tools that I'm sure many of you are using. So Adrian, Alex Moreno, I missed the weekly live stream, but I understand the reason. Yeah, don't worry, we'll be all together in here. We're not disappearing. The community stays strong. As I said, I just need, once a week, 2 hours every Sunday is a little bit difficult to manage with everything I'm juggling and spinning, but don't worry, we're hanging in there. Gleb, I would prefer shorter but more. Well, I think that's the thing. More is tricky. We're just talking about live streams here. So the option would be, as I said, one Sunday a month of a long one, or maybe 2 a month, similar to what I've done today, or a little bit shorter. So as I said, thank you for all that feedback. Now I'll go back over and read that when I'm out of the stream, and I'll also check, as I said, any comments you wish to further add on my community tab or below the video. If you're watching this back on replay especially, do let me know your thoughts. And as I said, at the end of the day, I will be giving you the same value in the end. It's just spread out a little bit differently to the way it currently was. Thanks again, everybody. I appreciate you all. As I said, keep on creating, keep on enjoying Ableton and electronic music and all that great stuff. I'll be doing a video on the channel probably next week if it all goes to plan time-wise, and I'll go in a little bit of depth there, a little bit more about some of the things I just touched on now. That is where I'm coming from into this world, how long I've been in it, a little bit about myself, a little bit about what matters to me about music and artists and producers, the people I work with, the work I do myself, what kind of matters to me, where I think we're heading, how I can kind of help with that, and lean into all that good stuff. So expect a little video on my channel at some point soon, just to explain a little bit more about that, and a bit about, as I said, all those good things. So thanks to you guys as well, Gleb, and Serum also. Yeah, I could do a Serum, but I'm not actually a Serum owner. The truth is there. I kind of have Pigments and Native Instruments and Arturia. I have many plugins, but I could always get it as a trial, just to run through some things if people want to see that being tweaked. But as I said, I don't own that synth actually, because yeah, too many plugins are just too many plugins. I have plugins that will do what Serum does. So I appreciate it's an amazing synth, but so is Arturia Pigments actually as well. So both good options as third party. Adrian Dantas, thank you to you. Gleb, nice to meet you here. Alex Moreno, whatever works best for you. Want to keep watching? Thank you. Well, thank you. I hope you're enjoying and learning on the channel here. That's what we're all about. Juan Pablo Castro had a good suggestion earlier as well. I'm definitely, as I said, gonna check this tab and make notes from it. Thanks everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your Sunday and weekend. Let's just sign out with what we have. Let's have a quick listen, and then we're going to say ciao ciao for today. Let's just hear what it would sound like if we speed it up a bit. So it can work. I did mean actually to do one variation here that I haven't done, which I can quickly show you. I got another little idea here, and it would be kind of this, which I think could be a possible evolution, something a bit like this, of that particular clip in the track. It might go more into the build, into right, so it could turn into a nice kind of more faster, choppier chords. Also something to try here on these pads. This nice long pad chord progression, another idea I had. So I'm just giving you some further quick little tips here, would be to put this down into maybe 8ths or 16ths here. So I'm changing the grid in the background and then slicing that up. So these are two things that could kind of, you know, take this track into a more build direction using both those clips and sounds, but taking them into new territory, more faster staccato. But this would need a bit of a change on the synth, to be honest. The envelope's a bit too... yeah, it would need to be sort of adjusted. So it might copy those chords, put it on a new instrument. Just demoing it with this instrument, right? So both those two things I've quickly shown there, they could be great for a build where you kind of take what, again, this is me thinking forwards. If we're in 4 hours, I would have just made more scenes, and those were two things I was thinking in the back of my mind. Let's make another build, even on top of what we have. Let's build it, chop up the pads, that pad chord there, and turn it into a nice like re-triggering sort of short notes, and do a similar thing with these chords where, as I said, I copy them over and turn them into some chord chops, more rhythmic, more kind of, that all adds energy and tension. So that is going to be me signing out now. Take care, everybody. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you next Sunday. As I said, my idea with the change of plans with the live streaming is to start from June. Yeah, as I said, love to hear your feedback in between times, and I'll build up a map and see how that all goes together with my own thoughts, and we'll go from there. I'm sticking around. Don't worry about that. Ciao, everybody. Have an amazing Sunday. Good to have you, seen you, been with you. Over and out, everybody. Ciao for now.